May 1945. Germany. A German general sat across from Patton. The war was over. He had surrendered 3 days ago. His army was gone. His country was finished. He had nothing left to lose. So he said what he had been thinking. "General Patton," he said, "I want you to know something." Patton looked at him. "I have studied your campaigns. North Africa, Sicily, France, the Bulge, the drive into Germany." He paused. "You are the finest general I have faced in this war. Perhaps the finest I have ever studied. I want you to know that I admire you. As a soldier, as a commander, as a man." He said it directly. There was no flattery in how he said it, no softness around the edges, no attempt to gain anything from it. Just one soldier telling another what he genuinely believed after a war that had given him an unusually close view of what the man across the table could do. The room was quiet. Patton's aide watched him. Patton's staff watched him. Everyone expected him to accept it, to nod, to say something brief and move on. Patton looked at the German general for a long moment. Then he said something. 3 sentences. And when the last one landed, nobody in that room made a sound for a full 10 seconds. Before we get into what happened next, if you want more untold stories from World War II, hit that subscribe button. It was May 9th, 1945, 2 days after Germany's formal surrender. Across the occupation zone, German officers were being processed, documented, disarmed, filed away into the system that would determine what happened to them next. Most of them said very little, most of them waited. The German general's name was Heinrich Stahl, 53 years old, from Munich. He had been in the German army since 1910. He had fought in the First World War as a young officer, survived it, and then spent the Second World War, commanding increasingly large formations as Germany first rose and then collapsed. By the spring of 1945, he was commanding what remained of an army group in southern Germany, a title that had become largely ceremonial as the formation, under his command, shrank week by week. When Germany surrendered on May 7th, Stahl had organized his men into columns and marched them to the nearest American processing point. He had done it calmly and efficiently, the way he had approached every difficult task in 35 years of military service. He was not a fanatic. He had never been one. He was a professional soldier who had served his country for most of his adult life, followed orders he sometimes disagreed with, and watched the war end the way he had suspected. It would end for the past 2 years. He had one request when he surrendered. He wanted to meet Patton, not his staff, not a representative, Patton himself, not to negotiate anything, not to argue his case or seek favorable treatment. He had studied Patton's campaigns in detail throughout the war, the way serious officers study serious opponents, the way Stahl had always worked. He had formed a clear opinion. He wanted to say it in person before the occupation machinery processed him into a prison camp somewhere, and the chance was gone forever. He was 53 years old. He understood that opportunities like this did not come back. The request worked its way up through the processing officers and reached Patton's headquarters by the end of the day. Colonel Thomas Reed, Patton's aide, brought it to him. "Sir, a German general named Stahl is asking to meet you personally. He commanded an army group in the south. His men surrendered at Salzburg." Patton looked at him. "What does he want?" "He says he has something he wants to say to you directly before the processing begins." Patton was quiet for a moment. He looked at the window, then back at Reed. "Bring him in," he said. "Tomorrow morning." Stahl arrived the following morning. Patton had given one instruction when the meeting was arranged: no guards standing directly over the man. He would come in and sit down like a person having a conversation. Stahl walked in without guards pressing close. He was in his dress uniform, pressed and clean despite the chaos of the last weeks of the war. He was a tall man, gray-haired, with the particular posture of someone who had worn a uniform for most of his adult life and had not yet found reason to change how he carried himself. He sat down across from Patton. The chair was already there. He simply sat. Patton's staff were in the room. Reed stood to one side. An interpreter sat nearby, present, but not yet needed. For a moment, neither man spoke. Then Stahl said it. He had studied Patton's campaigns. He named them specifically. He was clear and ordered, the way he apparently was about everything. North Africa, where Patton had taken a demoralized American force and turned it into something that could fight. Sicily, where the speed of the advance had caught German commanders completely off guard. The breakout from Normandy, the sweep across France, the pivot north during the Bulge, a movement Stahl described as one of the most remarkable logistical achievements in the history of modern warfare. He spoke for about 3 minutes, clearly, without notes, citing specific dates and operations and decisions, the kind of detail that only comes from having genuinely studied something. He described the moment in August 1944, when the Third Army's breakout had moved so fast that German commanders lost track of where it actually was. He described the December pivot as something that should not have been possible in the time it was accomplished. He had done exactly what he claimed. He had studied these campaigns carefully. Then he said the last part. "You are the finest general I have faced in this war. Perhaps the finest I have studied. I want you to know that I admire you. As a soldier, commander, as a man." He had nothing left to gain from anything. He was 53 years old. His army was gone. His country was occupied, and he was 2 days away from a prison camp. He was simply stating what he believed. The room was very quiet. The kind of quiet that happens when everyone present understands that something is being said that doesn't happen very often. Reed watched Patton's face. The staff watched Patton's face. Nobody moved. Patton looked at Stahl without speaking for a moment. Then he leaned back slightly in his chair. "General Stahl," he said, "I'm going to tell you something that I want you to think about." Stahl waited. "Everything you just described, North Africa, Sicily, France, the Bulge, all of it, none of it was done by me." He let that sit for a moment. "I studied maps. I gave orders. I moved pieces on a board. That is what a general does. Some generals do it well. Some do it badly. I happen to do it well. Fine, I'll accept that." He leaned forward slightly. "But the men who actually did what you're describing, the men who carried those orders out, mile by mile, in mud and cold and fear, they are not in this room. Most of them are not anywhere you can find them anymore. They are buried in France. They are buried in Belgium. They are buried in field between here and the English Channel." His voice stayed level throughout. No drama in it, just fact. "You came here to tell me you admire me. I understand that, and I will tell you honestly there is a part of me that is glad to hear it. I am not going to pretend otherwise. But the admiration you're offering belongs to those men, not to me." He looked at Stahl directly. "I was their instrument. They were not mine. Any general who forgets that is not worth admiring." He paused one final time. "If you want to admire someone, go find their graves. There are enough of them. They earned it more than I ever did." Nobody in the room spoke. Reed counted the seconds without meaning to. He got to 10 before Stahl moved. Stahl looked at Patton. His expression had shifted in a way that was hard to describe. Not embarrassed, not deflated. Something more like recognition, as if the answer had confirmed something he had suspected about this man, but hadn't been certain of until this moment. "I understand," Stahl said finally. He had been quiet for the 10 seconds, thinking. "I think that answer is exactly why I admired you." Patton looked at him for a moment longer. Then he nodded once, a brief, final acknowledgement, and stood up. The meeting was over. It had lasted less than 15 minutes. Stahl was processed through the standard prisoner of war system. He was held for 2 years and released in 1947. He returned to Munich, where he lived quietly for the rest of his life, avoiding the attention that came to some German officers of his rank. He wrote a short memoir in the early 1950s, covering his 35 years of military service. It was printed in a small German edition and never translated. One chapter covered the final days of the war. Near the end of that chapter, he described the meeting with Patton. "I went to tell him he was a great general," Stahl wrote. "He told me that great men were buried between Normandy and the Rhine, and that I should go find them if I wanted to express my admiration. I have thought about that answer for many years. I went expecting to give him something. I came away understanding that it was not his to receive. It was the most honest thing anyone said to me during the war, or after it." Patton never mentioned the meeting in any public setting or official report. Colonel Reed spoke about it once, many years later, when asked about the most unexpected thing he had witnessed in 2 years serving with Patton. "It wasn't strange at all," Reed said. That's what people get wrong when they hear it. They expect it to be some kind of unusual thing. Patton being humble. But that's not what it was. Patton wanted to win more than anyone I ever served with. He wanted to be remembered. He cared deeply about how history would see him. He said so, out loud, which most commanders won't. And then a German general sat down and gave him exactly what competitive men spend their whole careers wanting. Genuine recognition from a genuine opponent. And he gave it away. He paused. He gave it to the men who were dead. That's who he gave it to. Every bit of it, I've thought about that moment many times since. I don't think I've ever seen anything braver in a quiet way. He had exactly what he wanted, sitting right there across the table, and he handed it to people who couldn't even hear it. But was Patton right to respond the way he did? Let us know in the comments. And if you want more stories about World War II and the men who fought it, make sure to subscribe.